Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Orcocast episode 31 today with me, the one, the only, the Lord Val.
Hi.
Oh, God.
You
You're
come
not there.
You're
You're not there. Down below, from down under, well, not down under, but from Florida, is the one, the only, the Professor Panda.
Hello, you professionals.
It's early in the morning for you, so thank you for coming on again. It's amazing. And in the corner, to my, I don't know which side it is, Bum Bum.
Hello.
Amazing. We have a great program today. We are going to talk about Godfall, or how I lovingly call it, Godfail. We are going to talk about the mecha game Daemon X Machina, and we are going to talk about the failures of Atlas recently, which is going to be an amazing talk. So we are going to start about with Godfall, which is great, because we have three opinions in the same camp and one opinion in the other camp. That's going to be amazing. And I would just say we start out with the one guy who likes the game. Val, take it away.
Well, the game right now, what happens is some people are saying that it's got no end game. I can agree with them. There is there is not much of an end game to the game, but in my opinion, the game feels really good and it plays well. The visuals are stunning, in my opinion. It's a bit poorly optimized for PC, in my opinion. It might be because obviously it's a console port, and unfortunately it's only on PlayStation and PC. It's not available on any other consoles yet. Well, it's just basically what most people have been complaining about is the end game, basically. Like there is not, these kind of games are heavily relying on having enough end game to them so you can play over and over again, because obviously it's a looter, it's a slasher looter. So obviously you want to replay the game over and over again. And that has been the main complaint, in my opinion. The game feels good. I mean, the fighting mechanics are good. The weapons are good. Everything feels really good, in my opinion. People have been criticizing the game quite a lot, and I honestly don't think they deserve so much criticism.
Okay, then I'm gonna hook in right there. I've seen numerous complaints that just don't go over the end game. It's also the gameplay, because the gameplay is kind of a mess. That's what I've read a lot. The combat feels weak. The dodging mechanics are not very precise. So is the parrying. That's all what I've heard. It looks, when you just look at videos or people playing it. Of course, trailers will always look good, but I've seen, for example, November 4th play it live on stream. I've seen a few other streamers play it, and they all said the game feels just clunky and not good to play. The dodging feels off, the parrying feels off.
Yeah.
It just, to me, I don't know. It doesn't feel that. It feels good, really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But then I want to ask, well, how many character action games have you actually played? If you have a frame of reference for this style of gameplay.
Monster Hunter.
Well, that's not a character action game, really. This
well, it kind of similar. I mean,
no, because if I'm honest, because I watched essentially a game designer play the game, right? From what I've seen, he played, I think it was a 4-hour chunk of the mid game, and then he essentially what he saw was taking the game apart. And even from what I've seen, playing before he essentially broke it down, the game has myriad of issues that come down to basic game design. It's the levels are completely uninteresting. They try to essentially design a mid-ground between a character action game and something that takes well to randomized loot, say like Darksiders 2. There's an issue with the level design that essentially is just boring arenas one after the other. There is zero interesting level design that would take advantage of any special features of the combat. That's another thing. The Godfall doesn't have anything that makes it unique. My base impression of Godfall is what I have of Skyrim. It's an ocean that has the depth of a puddle. The only thing to chase essentially is the loot. There's nothing else. And even The UI design is absolutely atrocious. The optimization, as we said, it's whoa. I've seen indie games run better. And overall, like even the graphics themselves, yes, they are pretty, but they lack something that's distinct, like Godfall. Number of the locations I've seen, I was like, that's pretty much like Warframe or Destiny. There's nothing unique about it, and I think Godfall looks like something that's been essentially crapped out by a factory that had a blueprint. They knew what the game they wanted to make, just it has no soul, no unique ideas. Kinda would like it to be better because I love Darksiders 2, I think, and if we had something that's like playable in multiplayer, it would be great. I just think it needs a studio that knows what they're doing, because the developer here feels like they just had a rough idea of what they wanted to do, but didn't know how, and didn't know what to do to make it stand out. From what I've seen, Godfall feels like a McDonald's meal.
It feels like it's designed by committee. That's probably the biggest issue of it. Like, focus tested to hell and back.
Okay, back me up here, Panda.
So hi, this is Panda.
I'm calling the reinforcement.
I actually I didn't think I was going to find myself in a middle area between this, but I will. I do want to be very cautious though before I say this, and I don't want us to put a wall or a gate up when talking about this game, because I definitely understand the perspective of, looking at Godfall in comparison to like other looter slashers in the genre. But I would always defend the point that you do not have to have experience with existing games in that genre to qualify an opinion on this.
No. I didn't mean. Sorry, but that's not what I meant. I just meant because there is a certain point of reference to be expected, or do you just not see like what's essentially a bad game design?
Of course, and I'm not saying, I didn't want to say that you came off that way per se. I wanted to make sure to not set that precedent for anybody that goes back and watch this. But with that being said, I actually sit in a middle area. One of the things that I don't have a point of contention with Godfall is the actual gameplay itself. I actually, and this is coming from somebody that like I just recently played Dark Souls for the first time. And the panda smash aspect of putting yourself in a melee, like that style of play that I took from Godfall, I loved. I love them introducing that kind of combat into that style game, because it was very reminiscent of Monster Hunter, of Destiny for me. It had that same style for me, but it fit the style of gameplay that I like in a game to a terrifying level. That's the one thing I was a very big fan of when I played it, was the actual gameplay itself. That right there was actually the biggest selling point for me to consider continuing to play it. What I didn't enjoy, and this is something Bam Bam you were leaning towards as well, that I actually agree with. I found myself praising the experience of the game, but I didn't feel like I was taking anything away from it. Not saying that a game has to have a really in-depth story. It's not fair to have it up against something like, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I was comparing it to Hades a lot. So I think about the experience that I had with Hades, which is very much what I would consider a looter slasher style game as well, where very much a similar style gameplay, but I never felt that it sacrificed a unique story or concept to it to be able to stand on its own. And with Godfall, I kept thinking to myself, okay, so this reminds me of Destiny. Okay, this reminds me of Monster Hunter. This reminds me of Dark Souls, and that's fine. I actually think that we have to innovate off of existing games for us to progress. I'm all on board for that, but there wasn't anything I took away from Godfall that made me say, oh, I really liked Godfall for this, because it basically felt like, and I'll be completely transparent. The entire game to me felt like a pretty version of Mortal Shell. Now, I don't know if any of you have played Mortal Shell, but Mortal Shell very much is what this game is. The idea of being able to change out armors to do different things, which is what Godfall does. There was no part of Godfall that I experienced that I ever felt like I was playing something unique. Now, do I think there's potential there, kind of Val, to your point about the end game, maybe in the future that they can make themselves stand out? Mm-hmm. Probably, but I kept playing it thinking to myself, if I'm going to be playing this, why would I not play X, Y, or Z instead? That's what I kept struggling with during a lot of my experience. So that's kind of where I land right now, that I actually love the gameplay, but there wasn't anything unique enough about the game to draw me to continue playing it.
Like, the thing is also, like, you don't need a real story to get dragged into the game. Like, my favorite go-to is, I know Orco played it, Metal Gear Rising. Have you played it, Panda, or WoW?
I have not.
It's essentially a hack and slash that's based on the Metal Gear Solid franchise. And it's a character action game. The thing is, the story in there, it's absolute trash. The story doesn't matter. What makes the game extremely fun and hype to play is the way they design the combat. Okay, it's like they know we don't have story, and each of the bosses has like a shortcut scene, but they know it doesn't matter. What makes the bosses so memorable is how they incorporate music into the battles. And the better you do, the louder it gets, and then if you do really well, it kicks in the vocals. And that's what makes that game, like, on a paper it shouldn't work, but it works and makes the game unique. Godfall lacks any semblance of originality in itself. There is a lot of, as you said, Panda, there's insane amounts of aspects they take from other games, but they just take them. There's essentially zero spin on them. I don't like being like super negative about games because I want good games, but at the same time, I think, if you see a bad game, it should be called out.
I just don't think it's a bad game. In my opinion, I think it's missing some stuff.
Missing a lot.
Unfortunately, there is. I like the gameplay. You disagree with that? I do like the gameplay. I actually enjoy it.
As I said, like, to me myself, it feels like a soulless skyscraper. It just looks pretty, and you can make decent feeling gameplay on a template, and that's what it feels like to me. Obviously, like, because then again, I'm coming back because, well, you like Destiny, and you told me yourself that you like that constant like loop of getting loot, getting a new grade of loot, and grinding for that. And I get that. To me, that's like soul crushing. I would never do that. And that's what I see in Godfall. Is like, you could have just made a really good hack and slash instead of you just made this.
But I would say just to benchmark off that doesn't. I would argue that doesn't make it necessarily a bad game. It just makes it that a game that one, it's not something that you probably prefer, but two, that. But with that being said, I will say that I don't think. I think that if a game comes out and it's missing elements that you feel like should be there, or if there are things that you acknowledge that you don't like about it, I do advocate that being vocal about it is important. I think letting people know that, hey, this game doesn't appeal to me because of X, Y, and Z. I think that's relevant. It doesn't make it a bad game. It just doesn't make it appealing to me. And that's why my point as well. I will go to the ends of the earth and say that I think the gameplay is its best selling. If it could come out and it just polish a couple of things that I would want to see, which is just something that makes it unique for me, I would consistently play it because I love the concept of it. It's pretty fantastic, but just because there's nothing there that was a wow factor for me, I'm okay, but it doesn't make it a bad game for me. It just doesn't make it a game for myself. Does that make sense as well, Val?
Yeah,
I just kind of meet halfway.
Yeah, like, I think the best comparison I've heard is this is the Michael Bay essentially game. That's, to me, it's like, yes, it's like I watch a Michael Bay movie just for the hell of it, but I'm not gonna watch a Michael Bay movie for more than 2 hours, right? Whereas if I have to deal with it in a game form, I'm just gonna end myself after a couple of hours. And as you said, like, I think that's the issue as well. It's a really poor first impression with the lack of gameplay, no optimization, and I think that's the same issue like Avengers had as well.
I think to get back to the gameplay, Bam said, and this is a point nobody really hit on. He said that it's the same issue with Skyrim. You see an ocean with the depth of a puddle. I think the expectations are different. If I see a game like Godfall, I actually want to have very deep mechanics I can learn, mechanics I can really get myself into, learn new combos, do stuff like that. And this is just a game, like I already said, that feels very designed by committee to appeal to everyone or to a certain demographic, that feels just shallow. Because if you have to appeal to everyone, you cannot have a certain depth to it, because you will inevitably lose a part of your audience. And I don't think a character action game, which they were definitely going for if you look at the trailers, or at least alluring to it, doesn't work with looter shooter or looting, because you want to have in-depth mechanics with a character action game. There is more to it, why I still say it is a terribly designed game, and I will stand on that point, because you have to see the marketing, you have to see what they want to try to allure the audience to, you have to see how the developers behave in interviews and everything. And what they definitely, if you look at the trailers, if you look at what marketing material they also put out, they wanted to grab the character action audience. I just remember the trailer, as terrible as it was during the Xbox Game Showcase when we already talked about this game. They had this terrible hip hop song, that's why I remember it so well. What they showed was fast paced action, fast paced combos, and there is some people will obviously see a reference point to other games they've played. For me, it was DMC, for me, it was Bayonetta, for me, it was Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, because those are the character action games I like so much. Also, when I go to Twitch and look at the trailers they are currently running there, because I get Godfall ads when I go to channels where I don't have a subscription to, it's the same. It's fast cuts, it's fast action, and this is what they want to allure to. And it isn't that. It just isn't.
Yeah, I think there's, as I think we touched on it at the start of the discussion, I think there's people coming into Godfall with very different expectations based on the marketing. There's people like, as say, like Val, who like has no point of reference when it comes to character action games.
Which is not a wrong thing.
Which it's not a wrong thing. I never said that. And then there is like people like you and me who come in and it's like, we've played Devil May Cry, we played Bayonetta, we played Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, hell, we've played Darksiders 2. And those games are the thing. What makes them so good is the developer knew what they were doing, and they were coming in to make a super tight, fast-paced action game. Godfall only shows you that in a trailer. From what I've seen, the game's not even half as fast as it probably could have been if they decided to not make it a little thrasher. And that's the issue as well. It's a live service game, so they have to make it compatible with that side of the game as well, right? That's the problem, even like with games like Warframe and Destiny. Like, those are not super tight games. There has to be a wiggle room to account for lag and, whatever is happening to the connection to the server and such.
And even if they try to go for a more Dark Souls route, that might have maybe worked more in their favor. I don't touch on this normally a lot, but if you look at the scores it gets from the press and the audience, it doesn't look very good on both ends, and that says a lot about the game itself.
It's surprisingly even from what I've seen. There wasn't a whole lot of review bombing as you'd expect with a game on the Epic Store.
There is actually not a lot of review bombing happening because it's on the Epic Store. There are no Steam scores because it's on the Epic Store, and I bet they knew what they were doing. What I want to do is, and what I will probably do at one point, once the game is on sale, I will judge it for myself entirely after I've played it. But I can already tell my time with it will not be very good. I still have, for example, sometimes these hunches, and they come most likely true. It's not that I want to go in and hate a game. I wish Godfall was good. I mean, they even made a character action game with loot work in Darksiders 2. This is something that happened. And still, Godfall didn't really manage even that. So, and the combat, just to give you an impression of where I stand or what I see it as, it looks like they tried to mesh Dark Souls, the slower, more methodical combat of Dark Souls, with Darksiders or Bayonetta or DMC, Devil May Cry, and it just looks like it doesn't work. It doesn't mesh well for my taste.
What would have probably helped the game was if it had maybe a month or two, or just postpone the game, give it a little more time in the oven.
I think what would have helped the game even more is if it wasn't designed by committee, because I have a feeling it was just designed committee. Some boardroom members get together and thought, why not make Dark Souls with Destiny looting? And then they just designed, and that's my last word on that. Anybody wants to add something?
I think the game is brilliant.
I'm
just gonna leave it there. I enjoy what I enjoy. You guys know I enjoy these kind of games, and I think I'm grateful for
nobody
making a game like that. I don't know. You disagree with me. I completely agree with you.
That is okay. Look, I'm not knocking you because you enjoy the game. You can enjoy it as much as you want. I knock the game. If you enjoy the game, more power to you. I really hope they add more end game for you so you can grind the hell out of it. That's what I want for you.
I don't know. I don't have the background of those kind of games. I don't know. Like, it is I went in, I jumped in, I had a wonderful experience. I was like super happy with it. And I was saying, like, I was enjoying so much of the game. The looks of the game is, they're absolutely amazing. They look stunning. I also do, I don't know, a million other things. And I really enjoy it. Like, really. It needs some more end game because it's a bit repetitive. Yeah, it does happen. Same happened with Marvel Avengers. And unfortunately, it's lost of the player base. But I mean, I enjoy those kind of games because it's a bit of a change of a pace for me. And this is what the type of games that I enjoy. Some people play Battle Royale 24/7, 365 days a year, and it's they play non-stop. And to me, that I don't know how I could enjoy playing the same map over and over again. That's not for me. Those people enjoy battle royales, and I enjoy looters. It's a game that gives me loot and to improve and to chase, and it does feel good to me. That I'm sold. I'm a sold out. What can I say?
And that's I'm
a sucker. I'm a sucker for loot.
and if I can just to benchmark off that, just the only two that I have is the first one is I do exactly where I stand in the middle of this is with to Val's point. I very much lean on Val's perspective that I personally my experience with the game is I love the gameplay. I absolutely fell in love with the way the combat felt. I felt like it delivered what the trailer showed me. But that to me was also its downfall is everything that the trailer shows you is what the game is. That there's nothing else to it other than what it sells itself as. The fighting style, all of that. But I thoroughly enjoyed the way it felt playing the game. That was something that I will always say was the biggest win. But the second point that I have, and this is actually, Val, I'm going to heavily recommend this to you as well, especially is if you enjoyed Godfall at all, or even if you didn't enjoy Godfall, but you saw its potential and you haven't played it, my recommendation is check out Mortal Shell. It was a game that I feel like it hasn't seen a lot the visibility that it should, but it did this on a much smaller scale, but it was beautifully done. I kept thinking to myself, this is what Mortal Shell could have been with money behind it. And I just everything that you enjoy about this game, Val, I think you will really enjoy from that as well. And I think a lot of the things and concerns, Bam Bam and Orco that you've mentioned, a lot of that is solved by that game as well. So I want to at least one thing I want to at least leave on here is that even if you didn't like this game or its gameplay, that's completely fine. I strongly recommend you look into Mortal Shell because I think that is something that did this model extremely well. It's not multiplayer, but it's beautifully done. So I do want to at least acknowledge that that was my big takeaway from this, is that I enjoyed the gameplay, but I felt like it was attempting what I felt like Mortal Shell already did very, very well.
I mean, looking at Mortal Shell, it's got a good Metacritic, and everything. It's got good, it's not that bad. Yeah, it's a lot darker, isn't it? Like Godfall is very shiny, very colorful, and Mortal Shell is very dark, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is very much more of that gothic tone, but it was, oh man, I just
to just say something about that, because I find it very interesting that you compare Godfall and Mortal Shell. I've actually played Mortal Shell very extensively, and we talked actually about it before on the podcast. It's an interesting example because I can actually make another point here. Like, Mortal Shell took the Dark Souls formula and made it its own. It's a bit like the Johnny Cash cover of
Hurt.
Thank you. Because Mortal Shell is a really amazing game. Again, for me, just proves that Godfall is also designed by committee, because it actually didn't achieve that, what Mortal Shell did. This is like the line I draw. And Panda, you do me one favor, because I know you're a very open-minded individual. Have you ever played Metal Gear Rising?
I have not.
Please do that, and then go back to Godfall after it. And then you might see my point I'm making here. You might see it. I don't want you to agree with me that the gameplay in Godfall is terrible. Like I said, if you enjoy it, more power to you. But just play Metal Gear Rising, and then you might understand where I'm coming from. And bum.
Okay, I appreciate the recommendation. Something I'll keep on the radar as well, for sure.
Or like even the loot side of thing, like Darksiders 2 actually managed to do loot in a character action game that also does a lot more. It's like a Metroidvania game, essentially, or not a Metroidvania. It's a Zelda game that themed as a heavy metal album that has this fast-paced combat that's super tight. You can learn combos and stuff with several different weapon classes, and you also collect the weapons as a loot winner with random statistics and whatnot. So that's another option as well. It's a strictly solo game, but the game's amazing. It has one of the characters also voiced by Mark Hamill.
You sold me on that. No, Mark Hamill's involved. I'm in.
Darksiders 2 is another great option. So if you want to start a little bit more grounded, then go for Darksiders 2.
You know what is another good game?
Destiny 2? No.
Godfall.
It is.
I love it. I don't know. I'm looking at the game. I'm actually looking at Mortal Shell. I just, I don't like the dark, I bet the gameplay is probably much better than Godfall, but I just don't like the gothic kind of dark colors. I like colorful. I like, popping, and I like, the fact that, that's why I guess that's why I like so much.
Well, I do want to stress that it was something that surprised me, because I'm very much of the same mindset. It's there under the surface. It really caught me off guard. Like,
and
that's
it's got really good reviews as well, by the way.
It is very much a case of that is a game again. Like I'll give you a perfect example of the way a lot of the mods in the community described it. Is I Mr. Magoo my way through games. I don't know what the bamboo I'm doing in any shape, form, or fashion. Like with Dark Souls, I don't take time to learn combos. I don't learn how to play the game right. I play the game the way that I do it, which ironically, Godfall, the way you play that game was it is the way I play almost any game that I play. Like it gave me exactly how I normally play, which was a really weird paradigm shift for me, because again, usually I play games the wrong way. Like I somehow make it work, but I don't play it the right way, just because I play the way that I like to play games. And Godfall for me is designed for somebody like me. It is very much, the combat was fluid and simplistic enough that, like, if you just go in and just go to smashing, you're good, because the game leans towards that. Now, there are some combos available, but you don't need them. They're not expecting you to really utilize a lot of that. And that's what really caught me off guard with Godfall, because it's like, I was just going in, just kind of doing my own thing. And the game's like, oh, no. You got this. You're doing it right. You just keep doing what you're doing. Just take a big stick and start beating stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then that we're good to go. So I will say that that's one thing that surprised me with Godfall is it very much catered to somebody that does like I do. Like don't give me a lot of bandwidth to put complexity behind what I'm wanting to do. I know what I'm after. I know how I like to play, and I'm just going to try to make it work. And the game adhered to that, which is part of the reason why I think I really praise the gameplay as much as I do, because it is exactly the way I play other games, which usually I get punished for, but I'm usually successful in my own weird way. So I thought that was a really, really interesting point. But I'm not recommending this game, Val, for you saying that, oh, you will have a better experience than Godfall. If you enjoy the gameplay of Godfall, you will definitely enjoy this if you ever want to give it a try. That's all. I wanted to make that very clear, that I'm not saying it did it better than Godfall. It's very reminiscent.
I mean, I can see why the game has such a good reviews, because it looks really good as well and everything. And yeah, it's just that, I think it's just myself. I'm a big fan of, colorful, kind of like fantastic stuff,
I get you,
that's
buddy.
why that kind of like the look of the game it doesn't get my attention. That's why I was like, we actually talk about this game, and it was never in my radar. But obviously, I see now why it wasn't in my radar, because I like the colorful, style of Godfall, and even though it might do it better, might do it worse, it does it the way I like it. And like you said, I think it's just not punishing as bad as other games, man. I hate Darksiders when I get punished by making one mistake, and I'm like, Godfall is a lot more forgiving in that regard.
Yeah, I guess that's again coming down to, it's like essentially that's why Skyrim was so successful, because it didn't really demand anything from you. You could just essentially be in the game, do whatever, and you'll still, get to do what you want to do. Whereas it's like me, myself, I enjoy mechanical complexity of games. So I want to actually have that, where I have to spend, maybe a couple of minutes being like, oh, okay, this is how I do the combo. This is how it works.
Mm-hmm.
This is like how I launch enemies and stuff. Whereas like that's why even like when we first said it, it's like you don't have to really engage with the more complex mechanics of the game to get anywhere. That's another turn off for me, because that means it's like I can just essentially play it like God of War. I can spam square triangle and win the whole game.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it requires a little bit of end game, and that's the one thing is missing in my opinion. But other than that, I feel like the game does what it has to do, and it doesn't work for me. I'm a fan of the game. I love the game. You're not gonna change my mind. I don't care.
No, I'm not changing much. I mean, I didn't change your mind about Destiny being.
It's amazing. I mean, you're gonna end up loving it. You're gonna listening to me all day. You're gonna end up loving it. There is no way around it. Even Orco has played it. Come on, man.
I've played the game for a couple of hours, and I was like, nah.
Well, did you?
What are you gonna say?
Well, did you ever ask yourself why I never got back into Destiny after I played it?
Never, because probably you feel like you're so bad compared to me, and then you look at me and you're like, this guy's so good. He's like a god on this game, so I feel so bad. I'm not gonna play again. I bet that's what happened.
Don't want to feel intimidated.
That's totally what happened.
I intimidated. I didn't mean to, but I mean, unfortunately.
I mean, I'm terrible at Apex, and I go back into Apex, but yeah.
How do we end up driving the conversations to Destiny every single week?
I think it might be you.
I work for Bungie.
Destiny is my favorite punching bag, I'm gonna admit.
Well, they pay me to do this.
That's what I will. Right there you go. I was actually excited about us talking about this when Val was going to be talking about Destiny, because really my initial criticism was very heavily comparing it to Destiny. That there's a lot of similarities between the two, that I thought it did well, and some things that it did not do well. Like, it was very much a comparison against the two, and then I had a little bit more time to let it stew, and I'm like, no, No, it's a little bit more than that. So I'm glad I got the chance to do it. But ironically, I was like, because the two very much go hand in hand on a lot of things, sometimes to its benefit, and then some things to the detriment, because it feels like what Destiny offers just without a lot of the story aspects for me. That was very much so. That's why I understand, especially Val, from your perspective, while you probably enjoy a lot of the experience as well, because what Godfall does well, I feel Destiny does well. So that was very much, they were very much in parallel for me. So,
and the game is amazing. You don't like Destiny, Bungie. Thank you.
Pay me.
Pay us. We have to deal with Val, so we need to get paid as well.
That's true. That's true. I give you that one. You had to put up with me. You had to get paid somehow.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yes. Daemon X Machina. Bum bum. Let's go.
So Daemon X Machina was an original Switch game, and it got a PC port, I think, last year. It's a mecha game, and I love mecha. The most comparable thing it would be probably I know Orco probably played them, but I don't know if either of you, Panda or Val, played the Armored Core games on PS2 or PS1.
Yeah, and when you say mecha, you're talking about like
robots,
robot game. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's not that mecha. It's robots. It's Japanese mecha. So it's a game where essentially you get into the robot, you customize the robot, you fight enemies, you fight other players in robots. I'm gonna start with that I liked the game to a degree. There's a lot of issues I had with Daemon X Machina. I think the main one is the story that they try to push you through. Half of the time I was in a mission, characters were talking about story plot points that I didn't even know happened, but they apparently did. It kind of took me out of the missions because I didn't know what's at stake, what's happening. I don't think I really knew what I was doing in the missions and why I'm doing the missions until about 15 hours into the game, when I was reaching the final couple of missions where characters started talking more about what's actually happening and explaining terms they're throwing around. Yeah, up until then, I didn't know why the hell I'm essentially doing what I'm doing in the game. And that was probably the worst aspect of the game, because to a degree, I didn't feel like there was enough motivation for you to essentially engage with the missions. But on the flip side, the gameplay is absolutely amazing. And that's why I essentially stuck through the game, even if I essentially had zero idea what's happening, why it's happening, why am I being able to put robot parts on my character, why, like these enemies appear. Because the gameplay is essentially, because Armored Core games were mostly based around Battletech, which is the Western mech warrior franchise. Armored Cores were slower, it was more methodical. You used the environment, like buildings, used them as cover when you wanted to dodge enemies' rocket barrages or railguns. And then you also had a good amount of options to customize robots. So you could be like a big chunky boy, or you could be a smaller robot that can dart around and pepper enemies with weaker weapons, but because you're so mobile, you can just circle around them, being essentially not invincible because they can't hit you. What Daemon X Machina is, essentially takes that side of Armored Core with the different build, adding a flair of Gundam where you're super mobile, you can fly. In Armored Core, you couldn't fly indefinitely. Here, you can fly indefinitely. You can't just boost all the time. So you use different attachment points like your arms, shoulders, your back, so you can customize weapons between different classes, and then you get plopped into a giant arena, and that's the map, and you essentially do whatever you defend a point, defend a structure, or kill certain amount of enemies, you fight bosses. So yeah, I think if any questions, or Orco, you wanted to play, right?
Yes. I mean, I dabbled a little bit into it. I played a few missions, and it is more or less like you describe it. It's like a more mobile Armored Core in that sense. And it's a lot of fun so far. I haven't been able to get in depth into it, but the premise is there, and I absolutely love it.
Yes, the gameplay thing is what carries the game, because the story, essentially it's missing, but the gameplay is so good that I kept going through it, and I want to engage more with the multiplayer side, which is probably what was also one of the most fun parts about Armored Core, was the multiplayer, either co-op or PvP, because then essentially it comes down to actually finding the balance between mobility and defense, or if you want to specialize, doing be hyper mobile and use melee weapons, or do you want to be, again, a big chunky boy and shoot from the other side of the map with railguns and rocket launchers? Yeah, the one thing I kind of miss from Armored Core is the maniacal detail to which you could customize your robots. Especially in the later Armored Core games, essentially you would have, your entire skeleton is off balance because one of your parts it's heavier than the other on the opposite side. So you had to actually add weight to that side to make it balanced, so you don't essentially keel over to one side. Again, it's, I think, an upside to give the mobility you get with Daemon Ex Machina and the style of gameplay they're going for, because it's, again, much more faster paced, and it comes down to also, I think it would be a bit distracting when it comes to especially fighting other robots, because they can be just as mobile. And once those fights essentially into the sky, I think that it would maybe be a bit too much, where essentially you're like, your robot's imbalanced, so in the air you're essentially just rolling constantly to one side. What I liked also was the acquisition of parts, because it takes, I would probably compare it a bit to Monster Hunter, how the upgrade trees work for weapons, where essentially you start with one part or one weapon, and then you can essentially deviate from that. Either you upgrade it along one tree, or when you get far enough into one tree, it's like, you can make different parts that are essentially side grades that excel at different aspects. And there's enough statistics to pour over, so I myself, I like that. So I, was like, I'm making a robot for this, so I like to play around with those statistics instead of those ones. And I think that's where the game excels. It's more of a, I want to plop down, I want to play the gameplay. I don't really care about engaging with the story kind of game. That's what Daemon Ex Machina is for me, which is a shame, again, because Armored Core games, even if the story was a background dressing, it still was interesting background dressing. Here, the story pretty much just exists, and that's about all it does. It looks anime as F, but, that's my kind of aesthetic. It looks very much inspired by the kind of art style you'd see in, God Eater or Code Vein. It's, again, heavy reds on gray-white backgrounds, with some exceptions.
Not just when you make a Martian.
Yeah.
It's your character. It's been fun from what I've played so far, and I really want to go into it as well. The co-op mode seems to be the centerpiece, at least that's what I've read a lot of the time. We might do that at one point. We should do that at one point.
Oh, definitely. I'll bring out my super wacky robot. Should be fun.
Is it multiplayer?
Yeah, there's co-op and PvP. You can even do in co-op, there's special dungeons where you can get extra gear. So the game has a lot of meat on it. It's just a lot of the meat is in the multiplayer side of things.
Is it only on console?
No, it was original on Switch. Now it's on PC as well. I mean, it's running on Switch, so it should run on a potato.
Definitely.
Okay. It runs on a potato. You're ahead here. I'll say, it's probably priced cheaper than a normal game, isn't it?
No, absolutely not. That's kind of the flaw of the game. It costs 60.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty pricey.
Yeah, it's a bit pricey, that is true.
Is it worth it, though?
I would say depends how much you will engage with the multiplayer. If you're a big multiplayer guy, because there's a lot of extra stuff that you can get just through multiplayer. So if you play through multiplayer a lot, there's plenty. I mean, even just the story, it's sort of replayable, and you can there's extra objectives you can do, and once you finish it, you can go back and do the extra objectives that you didn't do even in the story missions. So it's at least 30 hours on the first playthrough, depending how good you are, and then you can maybe get another 30, 40 in the multiplayer if you want to collect all the extra gear. And I think I like the combat, and I try a couple of PvP matches, and they're fun, and I can see myself trying that every once in a while again. It reminds me much of it because it's on a Switch, so in a way it's a little bit paced like a mobile game. Not mobile game, but game on a portable console. It's a game that you can drop in, drop out. You don't really lose much, but at the same time you can constantly keep coming back to it, and you'll still get something out of it. Essentially, it's designed to be played over and over, maybe not in big chunks, but every once in a while you come back for a couple of hours, and it's like, okay, I had my fill, and maybe not touch it in a week and then come back.
Yeah, like a replayable game that you can play over and over again.
Yeah,
as much as you want. That sounds great. I mean, obviously, if you do like those kind of games and you're into, make a lot of that, obviously, that is a game you should keep an eye on. I mean, we got Black Friday coming really soon, so it might be discounted then.
Yeah, definitely is going to be. And as I said, if you're a fan of Armored Core games, I think you'll like Daemon X Machina a lot. There's just too much of that DNA in there to not like it if you're an Armored Core fan.
Sounds great to me.
All right, Panda.
Yeah, no, I'm actually fascinated by this because the only experience I have in any game similar to this, I don't even know if it's similar. It's a game called Override, which I don't know if it's even fair to qualify in the same bucket, but it basically was like it was a mech city brawl game, which I loved. It was so much fun because it the idea of two people having to combine to control a single mech, or and each one would choose a different mech and it would merge into a single. I don't know. It was very like Power Ranger-esque brawler. It was a brotastic time. That's the closest thing to any mech experience I think I've probably had. But I had a lot of fun with it. What made it enjoyable for me was the PvP aspect of it. So I can definitely understand the appeal and the selling point being if you plan on doing multiplayer, then it is worth the expense of the game. And I definitely can acknowledge that is a fair thing to ask on the game itself. So I was just looking up the kind of some of the trailers for it. This is something I'll definitely put on the radar. It looks like a pretty panderific time. So no, and I don't think it's something I would have considered had it not been broken down from the way you described it, because it just sounded like a game that seemed like unnecessarily complex from the outside to start looking into now, and it doesn't sound like that's the case personally. So no, that's not much to add, just because it's such a foreign area for me, other than the override experience I had. But I like what I've heard, and I'm excited to check it out. So
yeah, I think comparing to override is a bit hard, because override is, think of it as override has is more in tone with like old kaiju movies like Godzilla and Ultraman, whereas Daemon X Machina is more in tone with a Gundam. So it's yes, it's big robots, but it's more of think of it as like it's an action movie, whereas Override is more in with kaiju movies. It's and Ultraman, and that's straight up just monster movies. And the feel of the combat is essentially, it's like you're controlling in Override is like a big monster that's snomming around a town. Here, essentially, in Daemon X Machina, you're controlling a jet that's also a robot.
Okay, that's fine. Just don't ask me to kill Godzilla, because I won't. Hell to the king, baby.
In Daemon X Machina, actually, there is a couple of levels where you control the big robots, but they're more of a like to spice things up rather than the actual part. You sadly can't customize those robots. Also forgot you can get out of the robot and control your pilot on the ground as a separate unit. So if your robot gets destroyed, you don't strictly lose the game. You can still try to eke out a victory as a squishy human.
Or Special Forces game that I've had my eye on for a minute.
Oh, Air Defense Force.
Or sorry, yes, Air Defense Force. Our Special Forces is that old mod for DBZ.
Air Defense Forces, yeah. When you play the engineer, you can actually get into a robot as well. Some of them are big as a skyscraper in that game as well. Yeah. Okay, I think that's all of it for me from Daemon X Machina.
Then we'll move on to the last topic. Atlas. What are we doing with you? The one who was supposed to end it all is going to the dark side. And the recent blunders have not been good or not customer friendly. I mean, I've had issues with Atlas for the longest time because they were the first ones to region lock their PS3 releases, and I was pretty mad about that. That's a little while ago. The PS3 has always been built as a region-free console, but as we all know by now, that doesn't mean you cannot region lock your game. Their recent effort was actually re-releasing a fan favorite game, which is called Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, or Shin Megami Tensei 3, I think. Was it the third part?
Yes, it's SMP3, and it's Lucifer's Call in Europe.
In Europe, Lucifer's Call, exactly. It's been a fan favorite for the longest time. It's a PS2, I would say cult classic even, to the extent that they re-released it on the Switch, and the release is kind of a mess, to say the least. Because what they did effectively is they gutted the game. They didn't update anything about the game. Some stuff that was actually in the game in the original release, they took out to sell it as DLC. So you had the opportunity to get Dante from Devil May Cry as a character to recruit for your party. They cut that out and released it as a DLC. That's not all of their blunders as of late.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bum.
Essentially, I told you about it because I've seen the Japanese trailer when they did that announcement for having remastering Nocturne. It looked cool. I was like, because I love Lucifer's Ghost on Nocturne a lot. And then I reach the end of the trailer and I see, oh, they are asking essentially $60 for the game and $15 for the DLC because then you have the option to turn on also Raido Kuzunoha from Devil Summoners. But yeah, with Dante from Devil May Cry. And that wasn't the only DLC. They're releasing, I think, 5 other DLC packs each. I think it's like $8.99 or something. So that was probably the biggest blunder recently because also they didn't release it worldwide right away. They're taking, I think, 6 extra months to release it in the West as well. And there's been another issue with Atlus as well. They're essentially sacrificing every other game they publish or develop to promote their mainline series, which is now the Persona series. So that's the same thing. The main issue was it with 13 Sentinels, a game I've played just last month and I absolutely adore. That game released in Japan last year. It took them more than a year to essentially get translation going and get it out in the West. And there was no marketing for the game, despite it being some of the best output Atlus had on their hand in a while. Instead, they promoted, oh, we're releasing Persona 5 Scramble and drowning out every other piece of their output. Same with the region locking. And in general, I think Atlus is also abusing the DLC system. Recently got into Persona 5 Royal, which is the updated re-release of Persona 5. And the amount of useless DLC packs they try to throw at you, it's absurd. I totally expect Atlus at some point to hit a wall. Even with all the Persona stuff, they're getting way too greedy compared to other Japanese developers because they're not the only ones. Like when you look at the DLC lists for the Tales of games from Namco, it's getting absurd. But Atlus is just on another level, and it's really disheartening to see because I love some of their franchises, and I'd love them to continue being essentially the one company that actually manages to put some of the lesser known but impressive stuff out of smaller Japanese studios out to the West. That seems to be slowing down from Atlus especially, and they're just doubling down on milking essentially their Persona series, and that's it. Nothing else.
And they also partnered with rather questionable publisher here in the West. P-Cube is very slow when it comes to putting out games, and they are also known to censor some of the releases. It's a situation that is worth keeping in mind and monitoring, because Atlus is actually, like Bam said, has good franchises and interesting franchises, but at the moment and at the pace it's going into a decline rapidly.
I think them releasing Persona 5 was like an end of an era for Atlus, because that was probably the last, more of a marking the ending of a period where they actually felt like they gave a damn about publishing games that would be interesting instead of publishing games and putting out games that essentially are there just to make money. It's like, I love my Persona rhythm games, but I know they're just a cash grab, especially the one for the 3 and 5. Those are super low effort. I enjoy them because they're dumb fun, but I fully recognize that they didn't take more than 20 minutes to make.
Nobody got anything to add, I guess, from our two guests.
It's actually fascinating. I didn't realize a lot of that behind the scenes as well, especially for Atlus. So this has been interesting. I don't really have much to add to the conversation other than I just, I hate to hear it. I really do.
Yeah, but the Shin Megami Tensei re-release of Nocturne, or Lucifer's Call, was kind of the last straw, I guess, when they went full when they went full Activision on us.
Yeah, I think that was the most high profile like sign of it, because I think even like looking at the DLCs for Persona 5 Royal, it's a bit of a I was like my heart sank when I saw that. I was like, yeah, really? Okay.
I mean, I didn't even buy Royale so far because I was just, I have the original, so why do I need Royale?
I'm gonna say, if you did,
the same.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Panda, sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just gonna double check. This is the same group that did Persona, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure it was the right one I was thinking of, because I do know them for their Persona series. So just wanted to make sure. Sorry, go ahead, baby.
Yeah. That's even like playing into that, because like when people hear Atlas, they think is Persona, right? But there's so much more under that label, especially when you go back to up until PS3 era. They had so much going on. They had so many small studios that they published, and so many weird games. Like not all of them were great, but I'd still play because I like the independent Japanese output, or the like essentially mid-tier Japanese games. And yeah, they had Vanillaware, like the Odin Sphere, Muramasa Demon Blade, and I'm forgetting something, and the Dragon's Crown game. They had some of the best Japanese developers under them, and now essentially, speaking of Vanillaware, the 13 Sentinels, they essentially screwed the developer over by taking so long to translate their game. I would love to be excited about Shin Megami Tensei 5, but just can't at this point, because the direction of the company. It's like watching your favorite movie director make a really bad movie. You know it's gonna be bad from the trailers, and it's like watching a slow-mo train crash. It's just going to the inevitable end, I guess, unless something super drastic happens and they essentially course correct the direction of the company. But then again, people buy DLCs, even the worthless ones, so that's not gonna happen.
That's the sad reality of modern gaming.
Okay. But hey, we got Godfall.
There is nothing doesn't get any better than be with play Destiny and Godfall. Don't you take help my I bet you Bamba is gonna end up playing Destiny and he's gonna love it. Love-hate relationship, and you're gonna be like, man, I love Destiny. In a couple of years, I bet you Bambang is a pro. He's a Destiny pro.
As soon as Destiny starts to feel like Doom, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I do want to point out, Val, that parties in Destiny are 4-player, and we got 4 people here. I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just saying. Take the Orcocast on the road.
Yeah, Orco has had a taste already. I mean, he was a bit impressed by my skills, obviously, but there is nothing I can do about it. But then, we can make Orco.
I just want to point out again, I'm trash at Apex and still play Apex. Why don't I play Destiny 2 then?
You love it so much. You're gonna.
Yeah, I love it so much I don't play it.
Exactly. That's why. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
You've enjoyed the experience so much that you have to savor it and probably never play it again. Just to
like an 1868 Merlot or something like that.
I love it.
Yeah, sounds about right. I think that the game design is about as antiquated.
You're only gonna pop it. Wow.
Wow.
Bam coming in swinging.
That's all I have to say. Wow.
Holy
Bam.
How to treat a burn.com.
Yeah, no. Yeah, right.
I don't know what to say anymore.
That's the GG.
I'm done.
Bam.
I'm done, man. It's told me right now. Thank you, Bam. Love you too. Love you too, Bam.
No problem. I'll be here all weekend. Don't worry.
You wanna come over today? We got a raid and everything. You probably enjoy that.
There it is.
All right, I think that's a good point of cutting it right here. This has been a confrontational, banterous Orcocast 31. I thank the gentleman for being here. I hope Val's raid goes fantastic. And he can tell us where we can find that raid.
Well, you can find that raid on Destiny, surprisingly enough. We're going to be doing it on twitch.tv/Lord Gaming. It's going to be an intense raid. And shall I go with my socials?
Yeah, that was
and you can find me on Twitter, Lord Twitch. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram by Lord Gaming, and my YouTube channel, Lord Gaming. That's about it.
All right. Panda, where can we find you?
Absolutely. You can find me at twitch.tv/professor_panda. You can also find that on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, where we do all sorts of forms of panda positivity promotion. Just have a fantastic time. And Orca, thanks for having me.
You're always welcome. Bum.
Well,
you're in my chat.
You can find them on Destiny.
If they let me out of secret governmental labs, sometimes, yeah.
On Destiny, you can find them on Destiny, on Europa.
All right. You can find me not on Destiny, but you can find me on twitch.tv/theorcosaurus, twitter.com/theorcosaurus, and Instagram Orcosaurus, and everything else is also Orcosaurus. So, yeah. I wish everyone a farewell until the next episode. Bye-bye!
Bye!